Welcome back to On Texas Football, a little Sunday edition, a fun conversation today. I'm CJ Vogel, joined by lifetime Longhorn, the number 21 Rod Babers. Fun conversation today. Going to be looking at Texas versus the elites on their schedule. And of course, when we talk about the elites, it's the schools that are constantly in the conversation for a national championship, schools that are constantly in the conversation for the college football playoff. And we know that Texas has had success against Texas A&M and Oklahoma in recent years, but we're talking bigger picture, right? The Ohio States, the Georgias, the schools that, as we talked about, are in that national championship conversation each year, Rod. Of course, what does Texas need to improve on to make sure that they're winning these games? And also, who on this 2026 schedule might be in the conversation for some of this national title conversation as well? We'll get into that. But, Rod, ultimately, it's been a really successful 3-year run for Texas. I know that we were talking about this just before we went live on this recording, but Texas, for the most part, has handled business for every team that they were supposed to beat on their schedule, with obviously the blip against Florida in Gainesville in 2025. Yep. Texas has taken care of business when it comes to teams that they're expected to beat, and that's not something that I think should be overlooked at when it comes to Sark's tenure at Texas.
No, I agree. It reminds me of a great Chris Rock skit where Chris Rock always says, you don't get credit for stuff you're supposed to do. People always say, I take care of my kids. I've never been late to work. It's like, well, you ain't supposed to be late to work, and you're supposed to take care of your kids. I'm not going to give you credit for that. But I'm with you. Sark has done a great job where, prior to Sark, Texas, they were losing to teams, honestly, that weren't on their level, that weren't near their level. And you were uncertain from week to week whether Texas is going to take care of business. That's one thing Sark has brought back to the 40 acres, part of the standard and the expectation. Florida is the only loss pretty much in the last 3 years where you say, that's a loss. Texas lost to a team they weren't supposed to lose to, or a team that wasn't on their level. And that's why I think it was so shocking for Longhorn fans. But other than that, the big step for Sark is, all right, now how do you beat the teams that are on your level or have already proven that they've gone beyond where you have taken the Texas program? And by the way, there ain't a lot of teams in college football that have been beyond that point. You're talking about, like you said, Ohio State's there, Georgia's there. Maybe you want to throw in, Alabama, but that's Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer kind of combined. But there aren't many programs that inconsistently recently that have been able to contend for a national championship or be in that conversation. So Sark's done a good job with that, but there's no doubt he's got to take the next step, and that's beating the cream of the crop and to be the ultimate tack. And by the way, throw Indiana in there now. Yeah. Throw Signetti in the mix now, among those teams as well.
Yeah, it's crazy to include Indiana, but you're absolutely right. And, no reason right now to think that they won't be in this conversation moving forward. But to your point, Texas hasn't stumbled to an Iowa State, a TCU, a West Virginia, a Vanderbilt, the schools that you're supposed to be. A Kentucky, I know it got a little dicey this year, but when you win football games, things tend to get overlooked when you have deficiencies, and that's kind of the conversation point. And moving forward, Texas, obviously, the high expectations this year. You have a very talented roster going into 2026. Those expectations include making the college football playoff once again. And, when we talk about joining the Ohio States or the Georgias, that conversation, Texas is close. But you also have that conversation of, well, Texas still hasn't beat Kirby Smart yet, right? Steve Sarkisian and his crew still hasn't beaten Ryan Day. Now you'll have the opportunity to do just that. And there have been big wins under Sarkisian, right? You beat Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa. You beat Michigan twice, right? You've gone on and won a lot of big games. But Rod, when it comes to joining and becoming one of these top-notch national title teams where you're continually beating the schools up at the top, what is it that Texas, must improve upon specifically to do exactly that, to knock off an Ohio State or a Georgia in your eyes?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways you can come at that question. Easy answer right now would be, I need Texas offensively, and I think this is why they had such a push to acquire so many weapons on offense. Texas needs to be able to be elite in something offensively, hang their hat on something offensively, whether that's personnel or whether that's a certain, way that you approach critical moments, situational football, right? Like in 2024, Texas was the most explosive team in the country.
Yeah.
And it essentially saved them time after time. Nobody generated explosive plays more than Texas in 2024. I don't think it's a coincidence that that Texas team was knocking on the door of going to a national title because they were elite at something they can hang their hat on. And I think for Sark, that's a big part of why they got this group. So that would be number one for me. Like, what's their elite quality, their elite trait? Because that usually leads to your identity. This season, you didn't have anything that you were elite at on offense. So essentially, it was Arch. Arch was the identity of the offense because he was your elite trait, your elite quality. And also, you got to get back to more discipline. I was listening to an interview with Kurt Signetti, and he's just a fascinating guy. He said their goal was one penalty every 30 plays. And you say he combined offense, defense, and special teams. So all three phases, right? So one penalty for every 30 plays, right, in all three phases. And they ended up with one in every 40 plays.
Wow.
Unbelievable, right? Texas, I believe, was one in every 18 plays, like 18 plays. Texas was not great at all. You got to get back to a certain discipline, a baseline of discipline on the team, whether that's about executing or that's about, obviously, penalties is a big part of that too. And I think for Texas, they got talent everywhere. There's no doubt about that. But a certain baseline of discipline with how you play and how you execute. I think Texas got to get to that because that's become something that's a trend, like a troubling trend with the Sark regime. He's been great. Of course, we talked about it, but the teams have become more and more penalized, less disciplined. As he's going to 40 acres. They got to take care of that.
Now, what you talked about with identity, and obviously you can win a lot of football games with a great quarterback. We know that there's nothing groundbreaking in that sentence, but when it comes to an identity, is it enough to just have your quarterback be your identity if you're an offense? I mean, when you're talking about winning a national championship, I know the years of the Vince Youngs, the Cam Newtons, the guys that, seemingly you could just put on their shoulders. I don't know if you have that in today's era, especially when you look at recent quarterbacks that have won a national championship. I wouldn't necessarily say that all of them have been game-breaking level athletes or football players in general when it's Stetson Bennett for 2 years, right? Mendoza was great. I don't know how much of a game-changing talent he was, obviously, in the national championship, certainly.
Yeah.
But point is, a J.J. McCarthy, a guy that just kind of writes the ship for Arch Manning. Is that being the identity for Texas enough when it comes to beating and kind of dethroning the teams that are, quote unquote, ahead of you right now?
Yeah, no, it is. I'm with you. I think because you have a playoff now, you have to beat so many good teams on the way to the championship and in the championship. I think it's tougher. Yeah. It's tough for the quarterback to just be the guy. I always say it's tough because back in the day, guys like VY and Cam Newton, I always say, you got to put the cape on. We always make that reference, CJ. You and you put the cape on that moment. You put the cape on that drive in that quarter. You put the cape on. And we've seen that from Arch in those last 5 games. There were so many times where he would put the cape on and just put the team on his shoulders and lead them. Guys like VY and Cam Newton, they never took the cape off. It just stayed on all the time. And I think it's tougher and tougher to have that type of player, like you're saying, that just he's constantly always. You never see him have a down moment. Joe Burrow was close to it too. But look at the talent Joe Burrow had around him. So I can't even say that Joe Burrow was having that kind of season. He did, but he had first-round talent around him and weapons. And I think for Arch, if he's going to have – I want to compare him more to Joe Burrow. Hey, he can have that moment where that season where he keeps the cape on and never takes it off. But now you got Cam Coleman, and now you got Ryan Wingo, and now you got Hollywood around him. I'm going to call him Hollywood, like on first name basis with the young man now. I mean, now you got Raleek Brown too. And I think that's more the recipe is that what LSU did. Yes, you got one of those guys who can keep the cape on, but that may be asking a lot. And even, LSU didn't have to beat this many teams, right? Going deeper and deeper into the playoffs. So I think that's why it's like the NFL. Like it's tough to do that because I got to beat 3-4 good teams in the postseason. Right. That's hard to do.
Yeah. Being a one-trick pony to win a national championship, not sure you can do it, right? And, even when you do have a Randy Johnson level 100-mile-per-hour fastball, you still need to have the 88-mile-per-hour slider to come in when you're not spotting up or, to keep teams honest, right? So that's what I'm looking at with Texas is how can you continue to elevate to knock off in Ohio State? And, final point here is you get another chance at Ohio State very early in the season, and then you start looking ahead to SEC play. You go on the road to play LSU. You go on the road to play Tennessee. Of course, A&M and Oklahoma, 2 teams that made the college football playoff, Rod. When it comes to looking ahead, firepower, arch, identity, that's all going to be a big talking point. But dethroning Ohio State, I think, will be the focal point when it comes to the early part of the season. And then that conversation then continues of, will Texas be able to put itself into the national title contention conversation early enough?
Yeah, Texas, they're going to have to take it, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Texas got into a certain point. But that's why I'm upset you don't get to play Georgia on the regular season schedule. You're going to have to wait till the SEC title game to get that. But to take the SEC crown, you're going to have to go, like Ric Flair said, to beat a man, you got to beat the man. That's pretty clear. And Texas has not beat the man yet. That's what we come down to, right? To beat a man, you got to beat the man. And Texas wants to be the man, but they have not beat the man yet. They ain't beat Ohio State.
I know that we talked about identity, Rod, but is it more than that? Is it situational? Is it red zone? How do you beat the man if you're Texas moving into 26?
It is. That's why I said they need to be elite in certain areas, right? You look at bringing up Indiana. I'm bringing up the current national, but they were elite in third down on offense, right? They were elite in critical penalties, right? They were elite in those categories, the most disciplined team, arguably, in college football and in the Power Four. Texas has to get there. And that's why, Sark has never really been elite at Texas in red zone or third down.
Right.
Those are critical areas.
Surprising, too.
Right? Yeah, you've had a lot of weapons drafted on offense. Elite was now guys in the NFL that are proving they're elite. And yet they were, I'll take it back. Your first season at Texas, you were a top 5 red zone offense. Think about that. First season at Texas, no weapons, Bijan and Road, you had a top 5 red zone offense. So I take that back. You were elite then, right? You're elite in that critical area. You got to get back to being elite in some of those critical areas. Red zone, third down, short yardage. Because honestly, that's what defensive coordinators now, that's what they game plan for.
Yep. That's where they make their money.
Yeah, you can't stonewall an offense these days. It's just tough, right? Offenses are so sophisticated. They're so well prepared. They got so many great weapons. These days, you got to prepare for critical moments. And so many defensive coordinators I've listened to and I've studied, they say, I'm basically just game planning for third downs. I'm basically game planning for red zone. I'm basically game planning for that short yardage situation. And that's when I'm going to break out my big guns. That's when I'm actually going to give us a schematic advantage. Till then, we just got to play kind of, don't give up the big play. Don't give up anything big. Don't take any big risks. And then once I get in a critical moment of third down, even in the Super Bowl, go watch when Seattle dials up their best blitz packages. It was on third down.
Always.
Let's all right, third down. Let's go. And Sark's got to get better in those ones. So honestly, this is about Sark. A lot of this is about Sark because the weapons are there.
Weapons are there.
The weapons are there. Sark, there's no denying to say, we were insufficient here or there offensively. No, the weapons are there.
I agree.
It's about Sark evolving as a tactician. Right? Because speaking of bringing the Super Bowl, remember Devon Witherspoon in the post game, the Super Bowl said, we found some tails in that offensive line and their pass protection that we took advantage of. And I was like, dang, they knew. Yeah. They figured it out. Sark needs to, and I'm just bringing this one example. Obviously, talking about the best program in football organization right now, period. But that's what Sark needs to do. He needs to get back to being a tactician. Signetti's a tactician. Signetti is all about ball. Signetti will tell you, man, I'm all about ball. That's it. And I know Sark's all about it too. You got to get back to giving Texas schematic advantages in critical moments. Because you got a guy in Arch Manning who, when the play breaks down and you're off schedule and second reaction, he actually is really good.
Yeah, very good.
Best off schedule. So what you got to get back to is just giving Texas a schematic advantage. And I think Arch will take care of the rest. I really do. That when he's a guy that can make you right even when you're wrong.
That's right? Where I was headed with it.
Yeah. So I guess
correct you. Yeah.
Yes. That's why this is a big Sark year, guys. Big Sark year. Ooh, it's a big Sark year for Sark to evolve as a play caller because he ain't gonna get better than what he got at quarterback right now at Arch. I mean, it's
hard to get better than what you have at the receiver position. You have 2 all-conference running backs right in your backfield as well.
Come on.
We'll talk about how the offensive line evolves, but you're right. The pieces are there for Texas to become the man in this conversation. Now it's about the man moving the chess pieces behind behind the scenes to make sure that they're in the right position, essentially.
Yeah, you're right about think about it. Jim Knowles said he pulled out 2 plays that he never ran in that at the end of that game. 2 red zone defensive calls he had run all season long to beat Sark. Give Sark credit. That dude had to dig deep into his bag to beat Sark. Yeah. And they ended up getting a fumble recovery touchdown. But that's what I'm saying. That was a tactician to move. Sark should have been deeper in his bag. That's what it's going to take to dethrone the best football minds in college football. It ain't going to be easy. And Sark needs to, like I said, show us that he's a chess master and can go out there and outwit these guys as well. You ain't it's just about building the best roster.
It's not brute force. We've seen that tried.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm really excited about this season, man. Because honestly, he's probably going to have to hit. If you want to win a national title, you're probably going to have to see Signetti. You're probably going to see Kirby Smart.
You're absolutely right. I would be shocked if a national title run went without seeing one of the two. And, of course, Texas will already get a crack at Ryan Day, as we talked about. Lane Kiffin's going to be on the schedule. You still have Venables, Mike Elko. That's where you have to essentially assert yourself as the man, as we were talking about. And that's all coming ahead in 2026. But we know, Rod, when we look at this deck that Texas has assembled, a lot of kings in there, a lot of aces, a lot of guys that a lot of teams would love to have on their roster. And Texas has right now, assembled a group of very talented all-conference level guys. Now it's about making sure that the way that these guys are played, the way that the cards are dealt, put them in an advantage moving forward against other tacticianer guys that we're talking about here. But that's going to be a lot of the fun conversation and build up for the season, Rod. Final thoughts here, because Texas, again, they're close. They're knocking on the door, but to burst through, it's going to take more than just having, the jimmies, if you will.
No, but I think about these games, right? Because Texas hadn't lost a lot of games recently. So it's good you can even look at these games individually and go, man, where did they go wrong? And think about Kirby Smart. The only onside kick he's ever kicked in the history of his time at Georgia. That's what he pulled out against Sark. It's a credit to Sark. It's a credit, like, hey, man, that's what he went deep into his bag. He's like, I got to beat this guy. That's a tactician. That's a tactician. All right.
Hopefully what we see more of with Sark.
Yes. And same thing we brought up with Jim Knowles, right? Jim Knowles had to go. These are good things for that. I know it's bad that you got a loss, but it's good that you're like, even the fake punt. He went to a fake punt in the SEC title game to get the advantage over Sark because it was such a close game. In these really close games, what I always say, in big games, you got to break tendency, and you have to do it at the right time. That's the tactician in you. You've been saving these plays. You've been saving them up for a long time. You've been thinking about it. There's a reason, that Devon Witherspoon, the DV for the Seattle Seahawks, he had 22 pass rush snaps all season long, and he had 6 of them in the Super Bowl.
That's how you break tendencies.
You know what I mean? They didn't expect that. Nobody expected that. So Sark is so close, guys. He's really close. That's why these guys, to beat him, they're going deep into their bag to beat this guy. That's a great sign. But Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Rita Williams size, Cardi B size, Megan Thee Stallion size, J-Lo size, Sark gonna have to go deep into his bag, all right, to outwit them. He's capable of it because he's right there on the doorstep. But we have not seen him yet do that. This is the season. This is the season to do exactly that. Final year, Arch Manning, all the pieces that we talked about on the offensive side, and you're going to have plenty of opportunities to do exactly that. We talked about it with the schedule. Now it's going to be fun, Rod. We get to, kind of theorize and fantasize a little bit with spring football. And before you know it, the season will be right here upon us, and watching Texas try to become the man as the point of this. I would say. There you go.
All for it, Rod. Thank you very much for your knowledge and expertise. That was fantastic. Of course, and we're going to have it all covered every day on ontexasfootball.com and here on the channel. So make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back. But for Rod Babers, myself, and producer Matthew behind the scenes, thank you very much. Y'all have a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em.